The world was drowning in silence. Not peace, but the silence of fear. Empires ruled with iron hands. Hearts were tired, eyes searching for light. People spoke of freedom, yet lived in chains. They prayed for a sign, for a savior. Every nation waited. Every soul whispered the same word: hope. But hope felt distant, fading like smoke in the wind. In a small, forgotten town, dust-covered and poor, a story began, not with kings, but with faith. No banners, no crowds, no music, just the quiet heartbeat of destiny. Somewhere in that stillness, heaven leaned close to earth. Something eternal was about to awaken. A promise older than time itself was preparing to take its first breath. The world didn't see it coming, but heaven did. Not through power or pride, but through purity and surrender. Because when the world becomes darkest, that's when light chooses to arrive. This story is not about religion. It's about love that refuses to die. About sacrifice that breaks every chain. About faith that outlives kingdoms. And today, as you listen, this ancient light still calls your name. It whispers through centuries, "You are not forgotten." There is still something holy in you. So sit still for a moment. Let your heart remember what it once believed. This is where heaven meets earth, where silence becomes a song again, where the greatest story ever told begins with a breath of hope. In the quiet town of Nazareth, the air smelled of bread and dust. Mira lived there, gentle, young, unknown. Her days were simple, her heart pure. She helped her mother sweep the floor, sang softly while the sun faded behind the hills. No one knew her name beyond the village, but heaven did. One evening, the light in her room changed. A voice spoke before she could breathe. "Mira," it said, soft yet powerful. She froze, her hands shaking, eyes wide. A figure stood before her, glowing like fire and peace. "I am Gabriel. Do not be afraid." The words filled the air with stillness. Even silence seemed to kneel. "You have found favor with God," he said. "You will give birth to a son. He will be called the Son of the Most High. His kingdom will never end." Her breath trembled. Her mind couldn't understand, but her soul already knew. "How can this be?" she whispered. "I have never been with a man." Gabriel's eyes were calm as dawn. "The Spirit will come upon you. The child will be holy, born from heaven's promise." Mira felt her heart burning with something sacred. Not fear, not confusion, but surrender. She bowed her head and whispered, "Let it be so." And in that moment, the world changed. Heaven entered the heart of a girl. She sat alone for a long time, listening to the echo of the angel's words. Her hands touched her stomach, still empty. But she knew something divine had begun. The stars outside seemed brighter that night. Even the wind moved differently, slower, softer. Mira looked at the sky and smiled through tears. "Lord, I am yours," she said quietly. From that night, her soul carried a secret too heavy for fear to hold. She felt both small and infinite. chosen yet ordinary, fragile yet full of fire. The next morning, she walked through the village. People greeted her the same, unaware of the miracle. No one saw the light in her eyes. No one heard the song in her heart. Every step she took was now sacred. Every breath, a promise in motion. Heaven had touched earth through her, and she would never be the same again. Mira wasn't born for power or fame. She was born for purpose. Because sometimes the greatest miracles begin in the quiet hearts of the humble. And sometimes the smallest yes can awaken all of eternity. That was the beginning of hope, spoken through the voice of an angel, carried by a young girl, and written forever in the story of mankind. Jonas was a quiet man, a carpenter with rough hands and a gentle soul. He worked with wood and silence. Each cut, each nail, a prayer in disguise. He was engaged to Mira, the girl everyone called pure and kind. Their love was simple, honest, calm. He dreamed of a small home, a quiet life. But one morning, everything changed. The news spread through the narrow streets. Mira was with child, and the world whispered behind closed doors. Jonas stood frozen, heart burning with disbelief. Pain moved through his chest like fire. He loved her, but this he couldn't understand. He walked alone that evening, eyes on the ground. The smell of cedar filled his shop, but the peace he once knew was gone. He could not bear to shame her publicly, so he decided to end it quietly. His heart broke as he prayed that night. "Lord, I do not understand. Help me see." Sleep came slowly, heavy as grief. But heaven was not done with him. In the stillness of the night, a light filled the room, warm and gold. An angel appeared in his dream and said, "Jonas, do not be afraid. The child Mira carries is from God. Take her as your wife. This is His will. When the baby is born, call him Jeshua, for he will save many from their sins." Jonas woke with tears on his face. The dawn had never felt so real. He breathed deeply, heart still trembling. The carpenter had heard the voice of heaven. Without hesitation, he went to Mira's house. Her eyes lifted, unsure, afraid to speak. But before she could explain, he smiled. "I know," he said softly, "and I believe." She cried, not from shame but from relief. Two souls bound by faith, not reason. From that day, Jonas protected her. He became a shield made of love. He built their small home with his own hands. Every board carried hope instead of doubt. People still talked, but their whispers no longer mattered. Because love had become stronger than fear, and faith had found its foundation in a carpenter's heart. He worked by day and prayed by night. He waited for the moment that would change everything. For soon, heaven's promise would take its first breath, and Jonas would be there, holding the child of eternity. He was no longer just a man with wood and nails. He was part of a story larger than time itself. That night, as stars filled the sky, Jonas looked upward and whispered, "Thank you." Because even when life breaks your plans, sometimes it is only making room for miracles. The stars were pale that winter night. The wind carried the weight of prophecy. A decree from the empire spread like thunder. Everyone must return to their hometown to be counted. For Jonas, that meant Bethlehem, the city of David, miles away across dust and stone. Mira was heavy with child, her steps slow, her face calm yet tired. They owned no carriage, no comfort, no gold. Only faith and the courage to keep moving. The road was long, nearly 90 miles. Each mile tested their strength, their trust. Days under burning sun, nights cold enough to steal breath. Sometimes Jonas helped her onto a donkey. Other times, they both walked in silence. Villagers passed them with pitying eyes. Some offered food. Most offered only stares. But they didn't stop. They couldn't. Destiny was waiting. Jonas whispered prayers as he walked. Mira hummed songs she didn't remember learning. It was the sound of hope. Soft, fragile, yet unbreakable. When they reached the city, it was chaos. Every inn, every room, already taken. The streets echoed with voices. Animals, merchants, tired travelers seeking rest. Jonas knocked door after door. No space, they said. Try somewhere else. Mira's face was pale. Her time was near. Jonas's hands trembled as he begged again. Please, she's about to give birth. A kind old woman finally appeared. Her eyes soft, her tone gentle. There's a small place behind my house, she said. It's not much, but it's warm. It was a stable, filled with hay and silence. The smell of animals, the sound of breathing life. Jonas helped Mira lie down, his hands shaking more than hers. The world outside roared with noise. But inside that humble place, heaven was waiting. The cries of a newborn broke the night. The Son of God had entered the world. No throne, no crown, no riches, just hay, tears, and a mother's arms. Mira wrapped the baby in cloth, her eyes glowing like morning light. Jonas knelt beside her, silent, awestruck. He had built tables and doors, but never something this sacred. The child breathed softly, and all creation seemed to exhale. Outside, a star rose high above the hills. Its light cut through clouds like a promise kept. In that single moment, the ordinary became holy. The stable became a temple of love. The animals stood still as if they knew. The wind calmed as if it bowed. Jonas touched the child's tiny hand. "Welcome," he whispered, his voice breaking. Mira smiled through exhaustion and tears. She had carried eternity inside her, and now it lay before her eyes. They didn't need gold or guards or kings. They had something greater: peace. That night, heaven and earth met in silence, and a single baby's cry became the sound of a new beginning. Jonas looked at Mira and the child. He realized the world had already changed. Because sometimes, the greatest power begins in the smallest places. And sometimes, the light that saves the world is born in a manger. Beyond the city walls, fields stretched into darkness. Only the whisper of wind moved through the grass. A group of shepherds sat near a fire. Their clothes were torn, their hands rough and tired. They were men the world ignored. But heaven had not forgotten them. Suddenly the night split open with light. The air trembled. The sky turned gold. An angel appeared before them, radiant, calm, alive. "Do not be afraid," he said. "I bring good news of great joy for all people. Today in Bethlehem, a Savior has been born. You will find him wrapped in cloth, lying in a manger." Before they could speak, the sky exploded with song. Thousands of angels filled the air with glory. Peace on earth to those loved by God. The shepherds fell to their knees, speechless. Tears glistened on faces burned by sun and labor. Then one of them, young Eliam, whispered, "We must go. We must see this miracle." They left their flocks, their fire, their fear. They ran through the night, guided by the star. The streets were silent as they entered Bethlehem. Their hearts beat like drums of faith. The star rested above a small stable. The air inside glowed with something holy. They stepped in and froze. The smell of hay, the cry of a newborn. Mira looked up, startled at first, then smiled as if she already knew. Jonas stood behind her, his eyes soft with awe. The baby lay still, peaceful, perfect. The shepherds knelt, hands trembling. One whispered, "We are unworthy to stand here." But Mira said gently, "Love welcomes everyone." And they bowed lower, hearts burning with wonder. They told Jonas and Mira everything. The light, the song, the voice from the heavens. Jonas listened, eyes wet, voice shaking. "God truly keeps his promises," he said. Outside, the star blazed brighter than before. It was not just light, it was purpose. Far away in the east, 3 wise men saw it too. Were scholars, Melor, Sahir, and Aaron. They studied stars, believing the sky spoke truth. This one was different, alive, divine, eternal. They packed gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then they began their long journey west. Mountains, deserts, storms, they crossed them all. For the king they sought was greater than any on earth. When they arrived, they saw the child. Their hearts bowed before their bodies did. They laid their gifts before him. Gold for a king, incense for worship, myrrh for sacrifice. Jonas thanked them with tears of gratitude. Mira simply held the baby closer. In that humble place, strangers became believers, and love united those who once were worlds apart. But not all hearts were peaceful that night. King Herod heard the rumor of a newborn king. Fear twisted his smile into cruelty. He ordered to find and destroy the child, but heaven was watching. No darkness could erase what had begun. That night, as the star burned high above, a whisper echoed through time. The light had entered the world, and the world would never be the same again. The night had turned still and heavy. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Inside the stable, peace slept softly. But far away, danger was already moving. King Herod's fear had turned to madness. He ordered his soldiers to find the child. "No king shall rise while I still breathe," he said. His heart was full of darkness, not power. In the quiet of that same night, Jonas woke trembling from a dream. A light had filled his sleep again. The voice he once heard now returned. "Jonas, take Mira and the child. Leave Bethlehem. Go to Egypt at once. The king seeks the boy's life." The words struck deep like thunder in his soul. He rose without hesitation, heart racing. He touched Mira's shoulder gently. "Wake up," he whispered. "We must leave now." Her eyes opened. She saw the truth in his face. No questions, no fear, only faith. She gathered the child, wrapped in cloth. The donkey waited outside, quiet and still. The moon painted silver over the road. They left before dawn touched the hills. Every step echoed like destiny unfolding. Behind them, soldiers entered the city. Swords drawn, voices shouting, hearts empty of mercy. Cries filled Bethlehem before sunrise. Every mother held her child closer, weeping. But Jonas and Mira were already far away. Their journey through the desert had begun. Days under fire, nights beneath endless stars. Sand whipped their faces, thirst burned their lips. Mira sang softly to calm the baby. Jonas walked ahead, whispering prayers through pain. He looked back at her often, each time seeing both exhaustion and strength. They reached the borders of Egypt after many days. A foreign land, strange tongue, unfamiliar faces. But here, at last, they could rest. Jonas built a small shelter from wood and hope. Mira tended to the child, her arms trembling from fatigue. Still, when she looked at him, everything made sense. This was not a journey of fear. It was one of faith. Heaven had chosen them not for comfort, but for courage. Years passed quietly under Egypt's sun. The child grew strong, curious, kind. Locals would stop and smile at his calmness. There was light in his eyes beyond his age. Jonas worked again with his hands. Mira taught their son songs of prayer and peace. The world outside kept moving in chaos. But their small home remained full of love. One night, as the wind carried soft whispers, the same angel appeared in Jonas's dream. "Those who sought the child are gone," it said. "Return now to the land of Israel." Jonas woke and looked at Mira. Her smile was tired, but full of knowing. "It's time," she said, holding the child. And under the same stars that once guided them, they began their long road home. No army could stop them now, because love had already won. The world didn't yet understand, but the promise had survived. And in the arms of a young mother rested the light that would change all of time. Nazareth was quiet again. Hills surrounded the town like open arms. Mira and Jonas returned home in peace. No soldiers, no fear, only time and dust. Their house was small, but filled with light. The boy's laughter made the walls alive. His name was Jeshua, gentle, curious, calm. He watched the world with eyes too deep for his age. Jonas taught him how to shape wood. Each stroke, each grain, a lesson in patience. "Every tree has a purpose," Jonas would say. "You just have to see it before you cut." Jeshua listened more than he spoke. He worked carefully, like he understood creation itself. Mira watched them both with quiet joy, her hands busy, her heart always grateful. She taught Jeshua how to pray, not with many words, but with honesty. "God is near when your heart is still," she whispered. He nodded, eyes shining with wonder. The people in Nazareth knew their family well. Simple, humble, kind to everyone. Jeshua helped the neighbors carry water. He shared food, comforted crying children. He loved animals, even birds that stole grain. He said softly, "They too are hungry." No one could explain the peace he carried. It was not from this world. When storms came, he stood at the door, watching the rain, smiling like it was sacred. He found beauty where others found trouble. He found joy in what others called small. As he grew, so did the light inside him, a quiet strength that asked for nothing. At night, Jonas would tell him stories about kings, prophets, and courage. But Jeshua often turned the stories around. "What if courage is kindness?" he'd ask. Jonas smiled, proud and puzzled. He didn't know his son was teaching him too. When work was done, they walked through fields. Jeshua touched the wheat gently, as if blessing it. He watched people, not to judge, but to understand. He saw greed, pain, laughter, and fear. And every time he saw someone in need, his heart moved before his hands did. Mira saw it, that quiet compassion, the kind that grows in silence, not noise. One afternoon, an old neighbor fell ill. No one visited her. Most were afraid. But Jeshua went alone, bringing bread and water. He sat beside her, holding her hand. When she smiled weakly, he whispered, "You are not alone." She said, "Child, why are you so kind?" He replied, "Because love never asks who deserves it." She wept softly, not from pain, but from healing. And the whole village spoke of the boy again. Jonas listened and nodded silently. Mira prayed longer that night. Years passed like slow rivers. Jeshua grew taller, stronger, wiser. He helped his father fix homes, but inside, something deeper was forming. He prayed more often under the olive trees, sometimes for hours, sometimes in silence. He didn't ask for blessings. He asked for understanding. When people hurt him, he forgave easily. When they mocked him, he smiled. He said once to Mira, "Mother, they don't see yet, but they will, one day." She didn't understand, but her heart trembled. Something sacred was awakening in her child. Jonas grew older, his hair gray. He often watched Jeshua from afar, proud and calm. One evening, he said, "You will do great things, my son." Jeshua looked at him gently and replied, "Only if it serves others." The carpenter smiled through tears. He had raised not just a son, but a light. Nazareth slept each night under quiet stars. And inside that small home, destiny waited. Boy who played with dust and dreams was slowly becoming the voice of heaven. And though the world still lived in darkness, a new dawn was quietly preparing to rise. Every spring, the city of Jerusalem awakened, streets filled with voices, songs, and travelers. It was the time of Passover, a holy season of memory and faith. Jonas, Mira, and 12-year-old Jeshua joined the crowd. They walked for days, hearts full of reverence. The temple shone like gold under the sun. Pilgrims wept, prayed, and offered sacrifices. For Jeshua, it was more than tradition. It felt like coming home. He listened to the teachers speak of God. Their words stirred something ancient within him. His eyes glowed with quiet understanding. Each question he asked carried truth beyond his years. When the festival ended, families began to leave. The roads filled with laughter and songs. Jonas and Mira traveled with relatives. They assumed Jeshua walked somewhere behind. Bang. But that evening, he was nowhere to be found. Panic replaced peace. They searched the roads, called his name. Their hearts pounded with fear and guilt. "Where is he?" Mira cried. Jonas held her trembling hands. 3 days passed like eternity. Every corner of Jerusalem echoed with their search. Then, in the heart of the city, they found him. Inside the temple, calm, radiant, alive. He was sitting among scholars and priests, speaking, asking, teaching, not as a child, but as a master. The elders leaned closer, astonished by his words. How does this boy know such wisdom? Mira rushed forward, tears spilling down her cheeks. My son, why did you do this to us? Jeshua turned to her, gentle and composed. His voice carried both innocence and eternity. Why were you searching for me? He said softly. Did you not know I must be in my Father's house? The words hung in the air like fire. No one spoke, not even the scholars. Mira's heart ached with love and confusion. Jonas placed a hand on her shoulder, silent. They didn't understand, not fully, but deep inside, they knew this was sacred. Jeshua rose and followed them home. No resistance, no pride, only obedience. He walked beside Jonas, carrying his father's tools. His eyes, however, were fixed beyond the hills. He spoke less after that day. But when he did, his words felt older than time. He returned to work, to prayer, to silence. Yet everyone who met him felt changed. Even the old priests whispered in wonder. The child from Nazareth, there is something divine in him. At night, Mira replayed his words again and again. I must be in my Father's house. She didn't tell anyone. She kept it in her heart, where all holy things are kept. Years later, when she looked back, she realized that was the first sign, the first spark of his calling, hidden beneath the humility of a boy. The city of Jerusalem never forgot that day. Neither did heaven. Because in a single moment of revelation, the child became a messenger. And the temple, filled with ancient voices, heard, for the first time, the sound of destiny speaking. That was the day innocence met purpose, and the quiet heart of a boy began to carry eternity. After that day in the temple, life returned to its slow rhythm. Nazareth remained quiet, filled with sunlight and dust. The years began to move like soft waves. Jeshua grew taller, stronger, calmer. He worked beside Jonas, cutting wood, building homes. Each hammer strike echoed purpose, not noise. Each creation carried the patience of heaven. People came to him for help, not just for carpentry, but for peace. Something in his presence healed hearts. He spoke little, but his silence comforted many. Mira watched him from the doorway often. Her son was not like others. He laughed with children, listened to elders, and never spoke an unkind word. Yet, behind his eyes, she saw something vast, a knowing, deep as the sea. He helped farmers fix broken carts. He mended walls and carried water for widows. He worked for free when they had nothing. He said softly, "Love is never wasted." The people respected him, but few understood him. They called him the carpenter's son. But heaven called him something greater. He was waiting, not for fame, but for the right moment. When Jonas grew sick, Jeshua stayed beside him. He wiped his father's brow through long nights. Jonas whispered, "You were always my greatest work," and Jeshua smiled through quiet tears. When Jonas passed, the house felt empty, but love remained, shaping the silence. Jeshua became the man of the family. He cared for Mira and his younger siblings. He worked longer hours, ate less, prayed more. He found strength not in comfort, but in compassion. Sometimes, he would walk alone into the hills. The wind seemed to listen to his thoughts. He spoke to God without words, just stillness, breath, and surrender. People said he was strange, too quiet, too deep. But to him, solitude was a sacred friend. He learned how to wait, how to feel without reacting, how to love without reward. He saw the world, the greed, the suffering, the pride. And yet, he never grew bitter. He said to Mira once, "The world forgets love, but I will remind them again." She touched his face, tears shining in her eyes. "You were born for something I cannot name." He smiled. "Maybe it's not mine to name, only to live," and she understood without words. Years passed, quiet and holy. The carpenter's tools grew old, the hills unchanged. But Jeshua's heart was sharpening like a blade of mercy. He was preparing for something vast. Sometimes he helped heal small wounds, not with herbs, but with touch and prayer. People whispered, "There is power in him," but he asked them to stay silent. "This is not my time," he said, and they obeyed, sensing something sacred. When loneliness came, he did not fight it. He welcomed it as a teacher. He learned that silence can speak, and that pain can teach love if the heart stays open. Mira watched him each morning in prayer. The light fell on his face like recognition. The boy she once held was now a man of purpose. The same hands that built tables would one day heal the world. Every sunrise, Jeshua looked toward the horizon. He knew his waiting was almost over. But he never rushed destiny. He trusted its timing like breath itself. Nazareth saw nothing extraordinary. But heaven saw preparation, the shaping of a soul. He was both man and mystery, both son and servant. He was becoming ready for the weight of love, for the pain that would follow it. And when the time came, the world would meet not just a preacher, but a mirror of compassion itself. The carpenter's son, quiet, human, divine, was ready to begin his mission. The years of silence had built his fire, and soon that fire would light the world. The sun burned gold over the desert. The Jordan River shimmered beneath endless sky. People from every town were gathering there. They came dusty, weary, carrying sins like stones. By the water stood a wild man named John. He wore rough clothes, his eyes full of fire. He spoke not to please, but to awaken. Repent. The kingdom of heaven is near. His voice shook hearts, not just ears. People cried, confessed, and stepped into the river. He washed them not with water alone, but with hope that new life was possible. They called him a prophet. He called himself a messenger. I prepare the way, he said, for one far greater than me. One afternoon, as the crowd thinned, a quiet man walked down the hill. Dust on his sandals, peace in his eyes. It was Jeshua. John froze as their eyes met. Something inside him recognized eternity. You came to me, John whispered. You should be the one baptizing me. Jeshua stepped closer, calm and sure. Let it be so. It must be fulfilled. John hesitated, tears filling his eyes. Then he nodded and led him into the water. The river flowed cold around them. He lowered Jeshua beneath the surface. For a moment, silence. Then heaven opened. Light broke through clouds like fire. A dove descended and rested upon him. A voice thundered from above. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Every soul there fell to their knees. Even the river seemed to bow. John trembled, whispering, the time has come. Jeshua looked upward, eyes shining with purpose. He stepped from the water, dripping with glory. The wind moved around him like recognition. The crowd watched, speechless, in awe. Something divine had touched the earth again. But Jeshua didn't stay to receive praise. He walked away, quietly, into the wilderness. He wasn't seeking crowds or crowns. He was seeking clarity. The baptism was not the end. It was the beginning of everything. Heaven had spoken, but the desert still waited. Before the miracles came the silence. Before the teaching came the testing. And as the river returned to calm, the world had already changed. Because love had taken human form, and destiny had stepped into motion. The carpenter's son was no longer hidden. He was the chosen voice of light. And every heart that witnessed that moment knew they had seen the start of forever. The wilderness stretched endless beneath the sun. No trees, no shelter, only silence and heat. Jeshua walked alone, led by the Spirit. Each step carried both purpose and pain. He had eaten nothing for days. His body weakened, but his soul stayed strong. The wind howled across the dry land. Still, he prayed, eyes closed, heart open. This was no punishment. It was preparation. Because before one can heal the world, one must first conquer oneself. On the 40th day, the air grew heavy. A shadow appeared beside the stones. It was the tempter, cold, cunning, calm. His voice soft like poison in honey. If you are the Son of God, he whispered, turn these stones into bread. Hunger clawed at Jeshua's stomach. His lips cracked, his hands trembled. But his spirit didn't move. He lifted his head and spoke gently. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from God. The shadow smiled, unfazed. He led Jeshua to a high temple wall. "Jump," he said. "Angels will catch you. Prove your power. Make heaven obey." Jeshua looked down at the endless drop. His eyes burned with truth. "You shall not test the Lord your God." His voice was firm, his peace unshaken. The shadow's smile faded into rage. He took him to a mountain peak. Below them, kingdoms glimmered like stars. "Bow to me," the shadow hissed. "All this glory will be yours." Silence hung like a blade between them. Then Jeshua spoke, filled with fire. "Away from me, Satan! For I will worship only the Lord my God." His words cut the darkness like light. The wind stopped, the world exhaled, and the shadow vanished like smoke. Jeshua fell to his knees, weak but victorious. Angels descended, bringing rest and comfort. They touched his hands, healed his wounds. He closed his eyes, breathing peace again. The test was over. The mission had begun. He had faced temptation, not to destroy it, but to teach that love is stronger. He stood, the desert now silent around him. The sun no longer burned, it blessed. He walked out of the wilderness slowly, each step filled with new authority. The carpenter was gone. The teacher had risen. His heart was steady, his purpose clear. And the fire within him would soon awaken the world. The sun shimmered across the Sea of Galilee. Fishermen worked with tired hands and empty nets. Among them stood two brothers, Peter and Andrew. Their faces worn, their hearts quietly hopeful. They had caught nothing all night. The water gave only silence. Then, from the shore, a voice called out, "Cast your nets on the other side." They looked up. A man stood there. Calm, strong, eyes filled with peace. They obeyed, though unsure why. And when they pulled, the nets overflowed. Fish spilled over the edges, more than they had ever seen. Peter fell to his knees in shock. "Lord, I am not worthy to stand near you." But the man smiled gently and said, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will fish for people." And just like that, everything changed. They left their nets, their boats, their pasts. They followed him, the man called Jeshua. The air around him felt different, alive. As they walked, he said little. But each word he spoke cut through the noise of the world. "Follow me," he said again, simply. And they did, without hesitation. Soon after, he met two more brothers, James and John, sons of thunder. They too left everything behind, because something in his presence called to their souls. Jeshua didn't choose the powerful or the proud. He chose the humble, the teachable, the willing. He built not an army, but a family. A circle bound by faith, not by fear. In the evenings, they sat by the fire. He told them stories of mercy and truth. The kingdom of heaven, he said, is not far away. It lives within you. They listened, mesmerized by his words. They had never heard love spoken like that before. He walked with them through dusty roads, healing the sick, comforting the broken. People began to gather wherever he went. farmers, beggars, mothers with crying children. He touched the untouchable. He looked into eyes that the world avoided. And every time he did, something changed. The blind saw, the hopeless smiled, the disciples watched in awe, their faith growing with each step. Peter once asked, "Teacher, who are you truly?" Jeshua answered softly, "Come and see." He never shouted his greatness. He revealed it through compassion. When crowds grew too large, he often slipped away into the mountains. He prayed alone beneath the stars, whispering to the Father in heaven. The disciples would find him there, face calm, eyes glowing with light. They didn't understand everything yet. Saw on, but they felt it. They were part of something eternal. One night, as the waves lapped against the shore, he said to them, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. Go where others will not go. Love where others cannot love." They nodded, hearts pounding with purpose. Their journey had only begun, and though they didn't know it, their names would one day echo through centuries, because they had followed the voice of truth, not for reward, but for transformation. From that moment, Galilee would never be the same. The world itself had started to awaken. The carpenter's hands now healed the wounded. The fisherman's nets had turned into hope. And on that quiet shore, a new movement was born, one built on love. They had left everything, yet gained everything. Because when you walk with purpose, you never truly lose. And with Jeshua leading the way, the sea, the sky, and every heart began to believe again. Word of Jeshua spread like dawn light. Everywhere he went, crowds followed. They came limping, crying, desperate for hope, and he never turned anyone away. He didn't carry money or weapons. He carried mercy. His first miracle happened quietly, in a small village wedding full of laughter and song. But soon the music stopped. The wine was gone. Whispers rose. Faces turned anxious. Mira, now older and wise, looked at him gently. "They have no more wine," she said. He hesitated. "My time has not yet come." But her eyes said, "It has." Jeshua called the servants near. "Fill the jars with water," he said calmly. They obeyed, though puzzled. He nodded. "Now take it to the master." The man drank, paused, eyes wide in shock. "This is the best wine we've ever tasted." The crowd cheered. The music returned. And only a few knew the miracle that saved their joy. That night, Mira smiled through tears. Her son had stepped into destiny. Days later, a man covered in leprosy approached him, his body broken, his voice trembling. "If you are willing, you can make me clean." The crowd stepped back in disgust. But Jeshua stepped forward. He touched the man, something no one dared to do. "Willing," he said softly. "Be clean." The man's skin healed instantly. Tears of gratitude fell onto holy ground. People gasped. Some praised. Others whispered in fear. But Jeshua only smiled and told him, "Tell no one." Because true compassion seeks hearts, not headlines. Another day, he was teaching inside a crowded house. 4 men arrived, carrying their paralyzed friend. They couldn't get in. The doorway was full. So they climbed to the roof, tore a hole, and lowered him down. Dust fell over the crowd as the man lay before Jeshua. Everyone held their breath. "Your sins are forgiven," Jeshua said. The teachers murmured, "Only God can forgive." He looked at them calmly and replied, "Which is easier, to forgive or to heal?" Then he said to the man, "Stand. Take your mat. Go home." And he did, walking out as the crowd erupted in awe. Some cheered, some feared, but no one could deny what they saw. By the sea, he spoke to thousands. They had followed him for days without food. He asked his disciples, "What do we have?" "Only 5 loaves and 2 fish," they answered. He looked to heaven, gave thanks, and began to break the bread. Piece by piece, it multiplied in their hands. The crowd ate until full. Then 12 baskets of leftovers remained. Jeshua smiled, not for the miracle, but for the faith it had planted. He showed them that love doesn't run out when shared. One evening, a storm rose suddenly over the lake. Winds screamed, waves crashed, lightning split the sky. The disciples panicked, shouting, "Master, we're going to die." Jeshua was asleep, calm amid chaos. He stood, raised his hand, and said, "Peace, be still." And the wind obeyed. The sea grew silent like a child held close. The disciples whispered, "Who is this, that even the sea listens?" He turned to them and said gently, "Why are you afraid? Where is your faith?" They fell quiet, hearts burning with awe. Days later, he met a mother weeping by a tomb. Her brother, Lazarus, had been dead 4 days. "If you had been here," she cried, "my brother would not have died." Jeshua's eyes filled with tears. He walked to the tomb and said, "Roll the stone away." "But Lord," they said, "the smell." Still, he stood firm. He looked to the sky. "Father, thank you for hearing me." Then he shouted, "Lazarus, come out!" And out came the man, alive, still wrapped in cloth. The people screamed, some in fear, some in faith. Lazarus breathed again, and so did hope. Even death bowed before compassion. But as miracles grew, so did envy. The leaders of the temple watched in anger. They saw the crowds, the love, the freedom, and they feared losing control. "Who is this man?" they whispered. That even the dead obey him. But Jeshua was not fighting for power. He was fighting for hearts. He healed the body to reach the soul. He forgave so others could learn to forgive. Each miracle wasn't just proof, it was invitation. To believe, to change, to love again. Because real power doesn't rule, it restores. And true holiness doesn't separate, it embraces. From weddings to tombs, storms to silence. Jeshua's love moved like water, gentle, unstoppable. Every act, every touch, every word was rewriting the story of humanity. The world was watching. Heaven was smiling. And the carpenter's son was becoming the heartbeat of miracles. The hills of Galilee glowed beneath the morning sun. Crowds gathered wherever Jeshua went. They came from every village, hungry not just for bread, but for truth. He climbed a mountain and sat upon a rock. So, the people fell silent, waiting. He looked at them, the broken, the tired, the forgotten. And his voice rose soft as wind yet strong as thunder. "Blessed are the poor in spirit," he said, "for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Every word cut deep, like rain falling on thirsty ground. He wasn't teaching religion. He was teaching how to live. He told them, "Love your enemies. Pray for those who hurt you. Do not hate darkness. Become light. Do not seek revenge. Choose peace." People looked at one another in disbelief. No teacher had ever spoken like this. He said, "When you give, give in secret. When you pray, do not perform. Just be honest. When you worry about tomorrow, look at the birds. They neither plant nor reap, yet God feeds them. And if He feeds them, will He not care for you even more?" The people wept silently. His words felt like home. Then, lifting his eyes to the horizon, he said, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see love through your deeds." He didn't promise them comfort. He promised them meaning. He taught that real strength is gentleness, that true power is kindness. He spoke of forgiveness not as weakness, but as the highest form of courage. He warned them, "Do not build your life on sand. For storms will come. Build it upon the rock, upon truth. And when the winds blow, you will still stand." His voice echoed through the valley. Even the birds grew still to listen. Hours passed. No one moved. No one wanted to leave that mountain. For the first time, people saw God not as distant, but as love itself, near, breathing, alive. After the sermon, he walked down slowly. The crowd reached to touch his hands. They didn't seek miracles anymore. They sought transformation. A blind man called out from the crowd, "Lord, that I may see." Jeshua touched his eyes, and light filled them. The man fell to the ground crying. Another came, a woman broken by guilt. She wept at his feet, unable to speak. He lifted her gently and said, "Your sins are forgiven. Go in peace." Every act was a sermon of its own. Every healing a whisper of heaven's mercy. The leaders of the temple watched from afar. Their envy grew like a storm. They didn't understand his authority. They feared his freedom. But Jeshua walked on, unshaken. He had no army, no crown, only truth. He taught by walking, healed by touching, and loved by listening. At sunset, he stood once more upon the hill. The sky burned red behind him. He looked at his disciples and said softly, "Harvest is ready, but the laborers are few. Carry light wherever you go. The world is dark, but you are not alone." They nodded, hearts trembling with purpose. They had found something worth dying for. As night fell, Jeshua lifted his eyes to the stars. Each one shimmered like a promise kept. He whispered, "Father, may they understand." For this is how the world will change, through love. And the mountain, once silent, now echoed with the sound of eternity, because words spoken in truth never fade, they live forever. The days that followed were filled with wonder. Everywhere Jeshua went, hearts awakened. The blind saw, the lame walked, the lonely smiled. But not all eyes looked with love. The temple leaders watched from a distance. Jealousy flickered behind their calm faces. He breaks our laws, they whispered. He heals on the Sabbath. He eats with sinners. They saw crowds gathering, hope rising, and fear turned their faith into anger. But Jeshua never stopped. He kept walking, teaching, healing. He touched lepers, dined with outcasts, and forgave those the world had condemned. His words threatened those who loved control. His compassion exposed their hypocrisy. Still, he spoke softly, without pride or fear. The greatest among you must be a servant, for whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be lifted. Among his disciples, hearts stirred in confusion. They wanted a kingdom. He offered a cross. One of them, Jaron, began to drift. He wanted a crown, not a sacrifice. He followed Jeshua but questioned his ways. Why waste time with beggars and children? Jeshua only smiled, eyes full of knowing. The last shall be first. Jaron, remember this. But Jaron's heart grew colder each day. Pride whispered louder than faith. Meanwhile, Jeshua continued to walk through towns. He spoke of heaven as if it were home. The kingdom of God is within you, he said. Love your neighbor as yourself. Some wept at his words. Others turned away, afraid of change. He healed 10 men with leprosy. Pause. But only one returned to thank him. Still, he smiled, because gratitude itself was a miracle. He met a woman caught in sin. The crowd wanted to stone her to death. Jeshua knelt, writing in the dust. Let the one without sin throw the first stone. Silence fell. Stones dropped one by one. The woman wept, trembling before him. Go, he said softly, and sin no more. His mercy disarmed judgment itself. But every act of love drew sharper hatred. The leaders plotted in secret, meeting at night. This man will destroy our order, they said. We must stop him before the world follows. Spies followed his every move. Every word he spoke was twisted in whispers. The disciples noticed the tension growing. Peter clenched his fists. Let them come, he said. But Jeshua shook his head. The fight is not of swords, but of hearts. He began to speak more of his death. The others grew silent, afraid to understand. The Son of Man must suffer, he told them, but love will not be defeated. One evening, he stood on a hill overlooking Jerusalem. The city glowed beneath a golden sunset. He wept, his voice breaking through the wind. O Jerusalem, how I longed to gather you like children, but you would not listen. Even as rejection approached, his heart stayed tender. He wept not for himself, but for them. Jaron watched from behind, uneasy. Each tear from Jeshua's eyes hardened his own. The darkness within him whispered again, 30 pieces of silver, that's all. The seeds of betrayal began to bloom, and the shadow that had been rising now stretched far. Yet, Jeshua continued to walk among the people. He smiled, healed, and forgave as if nothing had changed. He knew what was coming. He just chose love anyway. Because true light doesn't fight the darkness. It outshines it. And though hatred moved in secret halls, peace still walked the dusty roads of Galilee. The storm was gathering, but the heart of heaven remained still. For even as betrayal took form, Jeshua's purpose was clear: to show the world that love, even when broken, still has the power to save it. Jerusalem shimmered under the evening lamps. The air was heavy, as if it already knew. Jeshua walked through the narrow streets silently. His disciples followed, unaware of how near the end was. He had asked 2 of them to prepare a room. "You will meet a man carrying water," he told them. "Follow him. He will show you a place." And so they found it, a quiet upper chamber. The table was low, the light soft and golden. Bread, wine, and lamb rested before them. When night fell, Jeshua entered slowly. He looked around at the faces he loved most. Peter, loyal but impulsive. John, gentle as morning. Jaron, hiding secrets behind calm eyes. Each man carried a heart he would soon die for. They ate in silence for a while. The room breathed with the sound of destiny. Then Jeshua stood. He took off his outer robe and knelt down. The others watched, confused and quiet. "What are you doing, Master?" Peter asked. Jeshua poured water into a basin. Then he began washing their feet. One by one, rough, calloused, dirty feet. He washed them with tenderness, even Jaron's. Peter tried to stop him. "Lord, you will never wash my feet." Jeshua looked up, eyes soft but steady. "If I do not wash you, you have no part with me." Peter's heart broke open. "Then wash all of me, Lord." He smiled. "You are already clean, but not all." Jaron's hands trembled, guilt already heavy inside him. When Jeshua finished, he stood again. He said, "I have given you an example. If I, your teacher, serve you, then serve one another with love." He took the bread into his hands. He held it high, blessed it, then broke it. "This is my body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." He lifted the cup, red as sunset. "This is my blood, poured out for forgiveness." The disciples sat frozen, hearts pounding. They didn't yet understand, but their souls felt it. Then he grew quiet, looking around the table. "One of you will betray me tonight." The air shattered into whispers and fear. "Is it me, Lord?" they asked one by one. Jeshua dipped his bread into the bowl. "The one who shares this with me." Jaron's hand met his in silence. The room turned still. Jeshua looked into his eyes, not with anger, but sorrow. "What you are about to do, do it quickly." Jaron's breath caught. He stood and left. The door closed behind him. The night swallowed him whole. Jeshua watched the darkness and sighed. Now the Son of Man will be glorified. The others sat in stunned silence. Outside, the wind began to rise. He looked at them again, eyes glowing with tears. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love each other. Their hearts ached as his voice softened. Do not let your hearts be troubled. In my Father's house are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. Thomas whispered, but how will we find the way? Jeshua smiled sadly. I am the way. I am the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Peter clenched his fists. I will die for you. Jeshua shook his head gently. Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter's eyes filled with disbelief and pain. The room grew quiet again. The weight of heaven hung between them. Jeshua stood and began to sing softly. A psalm of surrender, of peace. Then he lifted his face toward the heavens. Father, I have loved them as you loved me. Protect them, guide them, make them one. Not my will, but yours be done. He turned to his disciples, smiling through tears. Rise, let us go. They left the room together into the cool night. The moon hung pale above the olive trees. Jeshua walked ahead, leading them toward the garden. His steps calm, his heart steady. Behind him, the others followed, carrying both faith and fear. The city behind them still laughed and feasted, but heaven was already holding its breath. For love had just shared its final meal, and the shadow of sacrifice was drawing near. Yet even in that darkness, light still walked among them, because love, once chosen completely, cannot be stopped, not even by betrayal. The night air was cold over the Mount of Olives. The moon hung pale, watching what hearts could not bear. Jeshua led his friends into the garden. Sit here while I go to pray, he said softly. He took Peter, James, and John further in. His voice trembled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow. Stay awake with me, he whispered. Then he walked a little farther, falling to his knees. The ground was hard, his tears warm on the earth. Father, he prayed, if it is possible, let this cup pass. But not my will, yours be done. Sweat fell from his face like drops of blood. He rose and found them asleep. His friends, unable to carry his pain for an hour. He didn't shout. He simply sighed. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again he prayed, deeper, quieter, breaking inside. Yet every breath was still surrender. The wind changed. Footsteps echoed through the trees. Torches flickered. Swords gleamed in the dark. Jaron appeared at the front of the crowd. He smiled faintly, masking his trembling fear. He stepped forward and kissed Jeshua's cheek. Greetings, Master. Jeshua looked at him, not with anger, but sadness. Jaron, do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? Soldiers moved in, binding his hands with rope. Peter drew his sword, striking wildly in rage. Enough, Jeshua said, touching the wounded man. The ear healed instantly. Even his captor felt mercy. He turned to his friends. Let the scriptures be fulfilled. And they fled, hearts heavy with guilt and fear. He was led away through narrow streets. Faces shouting, mocking, spitting at his silence. They took him to the high priest's house. Questions flew like stones. Are you the Son of God? You say that I am, he answered calmly, and they struck him across the face. All night he stood bound, beaten, humiliated. Outside, Peter watched from the shadows. A servant girl whispered, "You were with him." He shook his head. "I don't know the man." Two more accused him. He swore and denied. Then a rooster crowed, piercing the dawn. Peter froze. Tears streamed down his face. He ran into the darkness, heart crushed with regret. Morning came. Jeshua was taken to Pilate. The crowd was already gathered, loud and hateful. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. "You say that I am," Jeshua replied. Pilate saw innocence but feared rebellion. He offered a choice. "Whom shall I release, Jeshua or Barabbas?" "Barabbas," they shouted. "Crucify Jeshua!" The sound echoed like thunder through the city. Pilate washed his hands before them. "I am innocent of this man's blood." But no one cared for truth. They wanted blood more than justice. The soldiers took him away, laughing cruelly. They placed a purple robe over his torn back. They twisted thorns into a crown, pressed it into his head until blood fell like tears. "Hail, King of the Jews," they mocked. He stood silently, eyes full of sorrow, not hate. Then they forced him to carry the cross, the wood heavy, his body already broken. He stumbled again and again. A stranger named Simon was pulled from the crowd to help. Together they climbed the hill called Golgotha. The sky grew darker with each step. At the top, they laid him down upon the wood. The nails glinted in the light, cold, merciless. One through each hand, one through his feet. The hammer fell. Heaven cried. The cross was raised high above the ground. Between two criminals, the Son of Love hung dying. The crowd jeered. Soldiers gambled for his clothes. But Jeshua looked down and said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." Even in agony, he chose mercy. Beside him, one thief mocked, "If you are the Messiah, save yourself and us." The other whispered, "We deserve this, but he does not. Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jeshua turned his head and said softly, "Today, you will be with me in paradise." Below the cross stood Mira, weeping silently. John held her close, unable to speak. Jeshua looked at them with love unbroken. "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." The sky turned black at noon. Thunder rolled though no storm came. The earth shook, the veil of the temple tore. Creation itself mourned its creator. Jeshua lifted his face toward heaven. "Father, why have you forsaken me?" The silence that followed was heavier than death. But even then, his heart held faith. He drew one final breath and whispered, "It is finished." Then, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And the world stopped. The soldiers lowered their weapons. One of them whispered, "Surely this man was the Son of God." They placed his body in Mira's arms. Tears fell onto his still face like rain. A rich man named Aram offered a tomb. They wrapped him in linen laid him within stone. A great rock was rolled before the entrance. Guards stood watch through the long, silent night. The city slept, but heaven did not. Something holy was waiting beneath the ground. Because love cannot die. It only waits for resurrection. The third day dawned quiet and pale. Mist clung to the hills like soft sorrow. The city of Jerusalem still slept, but heaven was already awake. At sunrise, 3 women walked toward the tomb. Myra among them, carrying spices and tears. The path was long, their hearts heavy. The air smelled of stone, grief, and silence. They wondered who would roll away the rock. It was too large for them to move. But when they arrived, they froze. The stone was gone. The tomb stood open. Mira dropped the jar in her hands. The sound shattered the still morning. She stepped forward, trembling. Inside, the place where he had lain was empty. Only the linen remained, folded with care. The light inside the tomb felt alive. Then a voice spoke, gentle, radiant, eternal. Why do you seek the living among the dead? 2 angels stood where his body had been. He is not here. He has risen. The women fell to their knees, trembling with awe. The world had changed without thunder or war. Mira wept, whispering, "My Lord." The angel smiled. "Go, tell his disciples." They ran through the streets, hearts racing with hope. Peter and John followed, breathless, unbelieving. They saw the same empty tomb, and wonder replaced despair. Jeshua was gone, but not lost. He was alive. That evening, while fear filled the disciples' room, he appeared among them. No sound of doors, no warning, only peace. "Do not be afraid," he said. "It is I." They turned and saw the marks in his hands. Tears broke, voices cracked, hearts revived. He smiled softly. "Peace be with you." He ate with them, spoke to them, and reminded them of all he had taught. "Love one another as I have loved you. Forgive as you have been forgiven. Go into all nations, teach truth, share light. Remember, I am with you always." Days passed. He appeared again by the sea. The morning light shimmered like his smile. He called to Peter, cooking bread over fire. "Do you love me?" Peter nodded, tears falling. "Yes, Lord, you know I do." "Feed my sheep," Jeshua said. "Love them as I have loved you." It was not a command, it was a promise. A new life had begun for all mankind. Before he returned to heaven, he lifted his hands one final time. "Do not lose heart. I am with you until the end of the age." And then he rose, light within light, grace within glory. The disciples fell to the ground, watching as heaven received him once more. The world had witnessed the impossible. Love defeating death. From that day, no grave could hold faith. No night could silence light. Because the cross was not the end. It was the beginning of eternity. And the empty tomb still whispers across time. Hope lives. Love wins. He is alive. The story did not end at the tomb. It began there. Because when love rose, it rose inside every human heart. Jeshua's words still travel through time. They cross oceans, ages, and broken souls. He taught that kindness is power, that forgiveness is victory. He showed that the greatest strength is to love even when it hurts. He lived not for praise, but for purpose, and he died not in defeat, but in triumph. His hands healed the sick, but his silence healed the world. He built no palace, no empire, no throne. He built hearts, one by one. And that is where his kingdom lives. Not in temples, but within us. When you forgive, you echo his spirit. When you help another, you continue his work. When you choose compassion over pride, you let his light breathe again. So if you feel tired, broken, unseen, remember, he was too. He was betrayed, wounded, left alone. Yet he still chose love. And that choice changed everything. It still can. Because true faith isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about standing in darkness and saying, I will love anyway. So let your heart be his home. Let your words carry his peace. And when the world grows cold, be the warmth that reminds it, light never fades. If this story touched your soul, tell us what hope means to you. Share it below and subscribe to walk with us through stories that awaken the heart. Together, let's learn English and learn to live with love. Because the story of Jeshua is the story still unfolding within you.